Frank's Monster Halloween Adventure. Chapter 1, Frank's Big Idea. Frank was a boy who loved all things spooky and scary. Halloween was his favorite holiday, and he always went all out with his costumes. This year, he had a big idea. He wanted to dress up as Frankenstein's monster, complete with green face paint, bolts on his neck, and tattered clothes. When Frank's mom saw his costume, she was amazed. "You look just like Frankenstein's monster," she exclaimed. "Are you sure you want to wear that to go trick-or-treating?" Frank nodded confidently. "Of course! It's Halloween, and I want to scare people." Chapter 2, Trick-or-treating begins. As Frank set out into his neighborhood, he felt like a true monster. His face paint was itchy, and the bolts on his neck kept slipping, but he didn't care. He was having too much fun scaring people and collecting candy. The first house Frank went to was decorated with spooky lights and cobwebs. He took a deep breath and knocked on the door, shouting "Trick or treat!" in his best monster voice. The woman who answered the door looked surprised and a little scared, but she smiled and handed him a candy bar. Chapter 3, Meeting the Neighbors. Frank visited house after house, shouting "Trick or treat!" and receiving candy in return. Some of his neighbors were scared of him, but most of them thought his costume was really cool. A few even asked to take pictures with him. As he went from door to door, Frank began to feel like a real celebrity. Kids on the street started pointing at him and calling him Frankenstein. Adults would smile and wave when they saw him coming. Frank felt like he was on top of the world. Chapter 4, A Spooky Encounter. Just as Frank was starting to get tired, he saw a house with a spooky graveyard in the front yard. He knew he had to check it out. He walked up to the house and knocked on the door, but nobody answered. Frank decided to take a closer look at the graveyard. As he was examining the fake gravestones, Frank heard a strange noise coming from behind him. He turned around and saw a figure in a black cloak and hood, holding a glowing pumpkin. Frank was scared at first, but then he realized that it was just someone else in a costume. "Whoa, you scared me," Frank said, laughing. "Nice costume." The figure smiled and handed Frank a candy bar. "Happy Halloween," he said before disappearing into the darkness. Chapter 5, The End of the Night. Frank visited a few more houses, but he was starting to feel tired and hungry. He decided to head back home and see how much candy he had collected. When he got back to his house, Frank's mom was waiting for him with a big bowl of popcorn. "How was trick-or-treating?" she asked. "It was awesome," Frank exclaimed. "Everyone loved my costume, and I got so much candy." Frank dumped his bag of candy onto the table and started sorting through it. He had a little bit of everything: chocolate bars, lollipops, and even some gummy worms. Frank felt like he had conquered Halloween. He couldn't wait to do it all over again next year. The end.